Why am I making this video? Part of it is to sort out my feelings of frustrations towards Rex, the main character from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, being excluded from Smash Bros. The other is to have a video to forward to my friends every single time they bring it up in a conversation. So, why do I think that Rex not being in Smash Ultimate is bullshit? Well, the answer I came to was that Rex's exclusion is merely the most visible problem I have with Smash Ultimate, and possibly a symptom of something else, only enhanced by the fact that he was my most wanted newcomer, and Sakurai isn't shutting up about him. There was also Nintendo of America's initial decision to pass over Xenoblade Chronicles, which was a huge subject for another day, but it left me bitter, extremely cynical, and very on guard and defensive in regards to anything about this franchise. Other factors include Smash 3DS and Wii U being a very tough act to follow, and consequently I was underwhelmed by Smash Ultimate. For all the content that's there, it feels hollow and empty at times. All the content is great, but it's kind of meaningless when you've played it all before, and the new content is lacking, or just padded out beyond Subspace Emissary levels of padding. I'm also really hoping that they pulled a Pokemon Sun and Moon and future-proofed their models so that less time is spent remaking fighters and stages in the future. So, I guess let's explore the reasons why Rex being excluded frustrates me. Smash Bros.' greatest strength is the large cast of characters that it gets together to fight out and star in a single game. It's also its greatest weakness. I actually only cared for 2 of the newcomers, and one of them was the early purchase bonus. This is a problem. I had this problem back since the 3DS and Wii U game had released, in that I didn't know where they could go from here. Even back then, it was becoming clear that they were hitting the upper limit on characters that they could choose and couldn't continue introducing the characters at the rate that they had. At the time, I thought we had a good 5 years until the next Smash was even announced, giving Nintendo's developers plenty of time to make new games and characters that could be included in Smash. 1 year of DLC and then nearly 2 years later, we're at Ultimate and its roster. This has got to be the most paint-by-numbers group of newcomers that the series has had. Ignoring the third-party characters and echoes for a moment, we have Inkling and Isabelle, the super popular characters that everyone loves. For Ridley and K. Rool, I can't say that I care or have much attachment to them, but it feels like it's about damn time for both of them, and the director had to be dragged kicking and screaming to actually include them. I also think that there's this whole passive-aggressive nature to it as well, where Pyrosphere, the stage Ridley showed up in Smash 4, was one of the few cut stages, and the stage from Smash 64, Planet Zebes, where Ridley could be seen in the background, didn't return when previously, for stages such as Dreamland 64, concessions were made so if King Dedede was being played, the sprite wouldn't spawn. Just there's this, fine, have it your way attitude. And then there's Incineroar, the flavor of the month Pokemon from the most recent generation. The most shocking and out there character wasn't even in the base game, it was the early purchase bonus, Piranha Plant, and they are perfect. I just look at these 6 characters and feel that most of them were expected, that this was the start and the bare minimum of what I wanted. The third parties are fine, they're an extension of the companies who are working with Nintendo. I wish Richter was a bit different other than just having blue fire, but that seems to be a problem with the Echoes in general. So, the Nintendo Echo Fighters. I don't like them, and they amount to glorified alternate costumes, when previously it felt like there actually had to be changes for clone characters. At least with how their moves worked, even if they were the same animations. Quite frankly, if they took Lucas's alternate color of Klaus away just to give it its own slot, and have a Xander Mopa's voice clip but kept it identical aside from minor animations and giving him his actual hair, I think I'd be rather pissed off, especially since that was my choice from the Smash Ballot, or rather, the Masked Man. For those who don't remember, the Smash Ballot opened in 2015, and it was a forum where fans could submit their most wanted character and it would be considered. But I believe the main reason for my source of disappointment with the characters is because the newcomers were chosen from the results of the Smash Ballot. From interviews, we know only 3-point Espelon characters were actually chosen by the ballot for Ultimate: Ridley, K. Rool, and Simon Belmont, and then we have Richter. Fan input can be a good thing, however it is also incredibly flawed. It left things extremely predictable. There needs to be a balance between fan-requested characters and actual surprises, because if there isn't, you get a roster of characters that people have wanted since Brawl, or even Melee, and not much else. Fan choices are also limited to what we know about, and in many ways are stuck and frozen in time. There's definitely some like Ridley and K. Rool who were always going to be wanted until they actually got put in the game as playable characters. And then there's others, which are flavor of the month choices, just being the new thing stuck in our consciousness until the next new game comes out. I also feel that if the roster was left being dictated by the fans, we wouldn't have characters such as Robin, where fans were stuck on these non-existent rules such as there can't be custom fighters because everyone's Robin is different, or so-and-so isn't relevant, or there wouldn't be a Wii Fit trainer because no one else would think to add her besides Sakurai. And a smash like that seems lifeless to me. Many of my favorite characters were originally unknowns or not conventional fighters. Villager was outright deconfirmed in the Brawl days, but in 3DS and Wii U he was right there in the first one announced. So, I guess the question after all that is, would adding Rex magically make this roster better? No, not really, it'd still be kind of predictable and lackluster. As I said, Rex was just the most visible symptom. His inclusion would just please me slightly more, that my flavor of the month character was chosen as opposed to the other one, and it distracts that they're running out of characters who qualify for Smash slightly better. Which really shouldn't be the case, since there have been plenty of games that Nintendo has developed and published. There's been lots of new franchises since Melee, but what games they actually pull characters from to be fighters is severely limited and leaves a lot to be desired. There's also Nintendo's recent design philosophy, which has been to make a game and then insert one of their characters into it. A well-known example of this was Kirby's Epic Yarn, which was supposed to star Prince Fluff, until Kirby was put into it. One game that managed to escape this was Splatoon. If the development team couldn't make any characters, they were going to have to put Mario characters in instead. Thankfully, they came up with the Inklings. This is ultimately the time where Smash has caught up with the high-profile characters to include, which makes games where they do make new characters, especially those suited for fighting, such as Xenoblade or ARMS, that much more important. I insult Incineroar by calling it the flavor of the month, but that designation could also fall on Rex, along with any of the Fire Emblem characters. But such flavor of the month characters provide a valuable service with helping the roster grow. Pokémon, Xenoblade, and Fire Emblem are Nintendo's ongoing series that have a constantly changing cast of characters or monsters with each new game. For other series such as The Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Bros., there is only the main cast of characters leading to nothing beyond the usual suspects, and characters just being modified to represent the most recent game. If Nintendo doesn't make new franchises or characters to put in, who else can you put in? You can only pull from existing franchises that are already in Smash so much, and I don't think Echo Fighter Deku Baba will quite have the same reception as Piranha Plant. Third parties are a solution, but are limited by how willing they are to negotiate, and if Nintendo thinks it's worth it. Infamously, there's Cloud, who was apparently hard to get back, outside of, "Everyone is here! Again!" I don't know if he'll be coming back. The downside to the flavor of the month characters is that they really only have one chance to get into Smash. For Pokemon, there's no playable Generation 3 or 5 Pokemon, solely because they weren't the most recent game. Their ship has sailed, and they're lucky if they get into a Pokeball. When Xenoblade 3 or Xenoblade Cross 2 or whatever the next one that comes out is called, will anyone remember Rex? You can't wait and see if a character is going to be impactful. See Greninja, Roy, or my personal favorite, Lucas. If Sakurai had waited to see if Mother 3 was going to be released internationally to add Lucas into Smash, my favorite character wouldn't be there in the game. The only official way that the Mother/Earthbound franchise lives on is through Smash. It's over. There's not going to be another game from a toy. Roy in particular is notable and remembered solely because he is in Smash. In Fire Emblem, he's forgotten for being a mediocre lord. These three characters also just serve as a constant reminder that timing isn't an excuse. The reason that Sakurai has repeatedly given for both Rex's and Springman's exclusion has been unfortunate timing. I don't believe that, and really think that is a poor excuse all things considered, mainly because timing has never been an issue before. There's also this.
By the way, here's one purchase bonus you'll get with the Fighter's Pass. It's a Mii Sword Fighter outfit based on Rex from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. We decided which fighters to include when we started planning, so we couldn't add characters from titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was announced after planning had started. I hope this outfit will help you feel like you're playing as Rex.
But, since this is the reason that Sakurai has said, let's talk real in-depth about timing. But first, a quick footnote. For whatever reason, the day that Sakurai says that the project plan for Smash Ultimate was started seems to change between interviews. The two main dates are December 16th, 2015, and after Bayonetta and Corrin were released as DLC, so February 3rd, 2016, depending on the interview. This is literally Schrodinger's project plan, so I've written what follows under the assumption that both dates are correct. In my opinion, Smash Ultimate was released too soon. There was not enough time between games, and Nintendo forced this situation to get it out early into the lifespan of the system and have a heavy hitter for the second Christmas season, and doing everything in their power to not have a repeat of the Wii U. While Smash has always had this bit of difficulty with including more recent stuff, it's especially noticeable here because it was 2 games back to back. And the other most recent character besides Incineroar was Corrin, who was DLC for Smash 4. Smash is this once per console generation giant event with normally at least half a decade between games. The time between Smash 4 and Ultimate was a lot less. Smash Wii U released in November 2014, and Smash Ultimate released in December 2018. On pen and paper, there was 4 years between them. Except there wasn't. Muddying the time between games was the 15th month period that Smash 3DS and Wii U got DLC. On February 3rd, 2016, the final characters were released, the game was completed, and development on Smash Ultimate began. The only time that there has been a gap this small in this series was between Smash 64 and Melee. What we know from Sakurai's Famitsu columns and various interviews is that the roster was called entirely on the product plan made during that period. So, basically, the roster was made for a game that would release nearly 3 years later. It horribly dates the game, and it shows. One would hope that due to the complete lack of time between games, they would have planned and accounted for this, and allocated time for potential newcomers if anyone interesting popped up, and if no one did, they could always fall back to more Smash ballot suggestions. Leading us to make matters worse, they did allow for enough time for one blank slot. It was exclusively for a Sun and Moon Pokemon, and we got Incineroar. Personal note, I never want to hear this line again.
We decided which fighters to include when we started planning, so we couldn't add characters from titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was announced after planning had started.
Because Sun and Moon was announced on the 26th of February, so regardless of which date is true, remember, there are no rules to Smash Bros. Even if there is an established rule, it's broken anyways. Also, the suddenly just established rule was never an issue previously. I think that this reason of unfortunate timing loses a lot of its meaning when the last game included a fighter that was made solely from concept art. Anything after you've done that is a hard sell to accept. This carefully worded PR line,
we decided which fighters to include when we started planning, so we couldn't add characters from titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was announced after planning had started,
loses all meaning when you remember Sakurai is not a member of the general public. He doesn't find out about games when we do, whenever Nintendo decides to drip feed that information to us. There was at least one instance with Ultimate where a future release was teased, that being Luigi's Mansion 3 in the Belmont trailer. He can go to any studio and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to show him what their upcoming projects are, because that's also exactly how Roy got into Melee. I believe wholeheartedly that there are no rules to Smash Bros., and timing has never been an issue if characters have gotten into Smash before their game is even out, or if the Smash devs have only had concept art to work with. Objection! I hear everyone shouting. Rex didn't have concept art at that point in time, and his design was still being finalized. Except, we don't know that, and if I had to wager a guess, I want to say that he was done at that time, and he was probably the first character in Xenoblade Chronicles to be designed. This is going to sound like the strangest, most grasping for straws answer I can give, but from public interviews, we know that February 2015, Xenoblade 2's story was written and the main character designer had read it. Let's crack out the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 collected works. This is the art book that was released with the special edition of the game. There was a newer art book released recently, but I haven't been able to purchase it yet or even find full scans of it online. The earliest a character is dated is April 5th, 2016 for Nile. And for most of the main cast, they all have dates ranging from mid-May for Nia to October for Mithra. Dates are suspiciously absent from most of Rex's concept art, the one exception being a facial expression sketch dated September 12th, 2016. That's it, end of story, right? Rex wasn't designed until sometime middle of 2016, right? Well, Nia also has some facial expressions dated the same day, and her finalized outline/color is dated May 17th, 2016. There is also one other thing that leads me to believe Rex was designed earlier. Rex appears in a lot of the environmental art for the game. A lot of it, he is in the exact same pose, so not being too familiar with this process, my best guess is it was a transparent PNG that they had to illustrate the size and scale when making the environments, especially when there's an image of quite a few party members just pasted strangely there. But there's actually a few pages where Rex is actually drawn in. From what we know, this is Rex and Pyra's original design, unlocked by beating both Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and the Torna DLC. And at least from my perspective, Rex's design didn't change that much. Pyra, on the other hand, yeah, she went through some massive changes, and going by the dates in the art book, Mithra seemed to be the last one fully designed. Unfortunately though, even with this art, we still don't know when it was made, so we don't have a date for when Rex had his first design. And so, I can't prove anything. I can only speculate, and I have two theories. The first, Rex was in a finalized state and could have been implemented, or at least in a far enough state that any major changes in his design could have just been called a Smash Brothers version, because minor or major variation in character designs, including full-blown character redesigns, has never actually meant anything before in this series. See Pit, Marth, Wii U/3DS Roy, or Mithra's Spirit. However, in this state, he would have been no different than a Fire Emblem character, just another sword user, because Pyra and Mithra, on the other hand, would have been the nails in the coffin. With Sakurai's sudden desire to have characters with their mechanics from their game implemented in Smash, this would be difficult for Rex if no blades were actually designed at that point in time. The second, and probably far more realistic reason, it was never in the cards, just going by a complete lack of anything else taken from the Xenoblade series beyond music, when there were still two other games to pull from for characters, including one that released at least 8 months before this project plan was started, and should have been fresh in everyone's mind. The only new Xenoblade content was Fiora being added into Shulk's final Smash. This leads me to believe that even if Xenoblade 2 or ARMS was known about earlier, they still wouldn't have been included. And if this was the truth, honestly, I think I just prefer the bluntness. It still would be disappointing, but I feel like I could at least accept it and get over it, which is the exact opposite feeling every single time I see the unfortunate timing line. And I think what bugs me the most about the unfortunate timing line is that while it may be true, it constantly comes across as this seedy half-truth, and implies this possibility where if Smash was released later, or Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was released earlier, Rex would somehow be there, when everything else being equal points to that not being the case.
I hope this outfit will help you feel like you're playing as Rex.
Does anyone even actually like the Mii fighters? Because I'm not even sure the developers like them, and from the Smash devs, I get the most conflicting message from them with how they're presented. They want to rep the Miis, but at the same time, they want them to be their own thing. They simultaneously have this substantial amount of content dedicated to them, but are constantly locked out of modes. In Smash 4, there was an excessive amount of paid costumes for them, but you couldn't take them online against random people, while in this game, they're the only characters with customizable movesets, yet they don't have a classic mode. And then there's the assist trophies. Some characters, there's no way they'd actually work as fighters, so an assist trophy makes sense. For example, take Dr. Kawashima. He's a floating head, there's not much there. Or the Prince of Sable. He transforms into a frog or a snake, and even though there's more to him than that, that's probably a lot more interesting than having him just be another sword fighter. As a concept, they made a lot more sense in the Brawl days. They were essentially Pokeballs for non-Pokemon, and a way to further expand what's represented in Smash without giving the resources required for a playable fighter. In some ways, they work best for super obscure characters like the Prince of Sable, or if characters are just sprites like the Sheriff. However, since they are items and you can turn them off, there's always the chance that people won't see them. And to them, the characters aren't in the game. And with that, there is also some serious dissonance between the developers and customers in regards to the Mii costumes and assist trophies. These have to be the ultimate double-edged swords. For the devs, they appear to be a way to increase the content and references to other series. To the fans of that character, it comes across as the ultimate insult. Also, times change. On systems actually capable of DLC, assist trophies suddenly bring a certain amount of baggage, and the thought that if a character is an assist trophy or represented as a Mii fighter costume, they can't be a DLC. I know I just finished saying that there is no rules to Smash, but this one I'm at least willing to say that I see the logic. From the dev's point of view, why would you waste more time on something already in the game? From a casual customer, why would you buy DLC for a character that was already in the game? They just weren't playable before. That's a tough sell and would probably set a bad precedent. DLC has to be something people will buy. And with that logic, if the Rex Mii costume was the bonus for buying the Fighter's Pass, why would you give what amounts to the same item twice? So, I guess the question is, would I rather Rex not even being referenced as a Mii costume? Would I rather certain characters not being assist trophies and them not being in the game at all? Honestly, yes. Because then I would at least have hope. Some vague, illogical hope based on nothing for DLC and being able to hold out until the very end. But instead, I have despair. And I see the Mii costume as a kiss of death. And while it may bode well for the next game, that's quite a bit away. So, to summarize the answer to my original question of why I think Rex not being in Smash Ultimate is bullshit, is that its multiple combining factors brought on by a lackluster and predictable roster that barely feels like an upgrade, the lack of time between games and not accounting for that, numerous reasons which make no sense and have never been an issue before, the frustration of being told,
We decided which fighters to include when we started planning, so we couldn't add characters from titles like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was announced after planning had started.
When less than 30 minutes prior, Nintendo had announced a character that was just that, there's also a sense of tone deafness with Mii's and assist trophies, and other factors brought on by changing trends in gaming. And those were just the main points I was able to focus on in a coherent manner. All of it just adding up to me admitting I'm disappointed and expected more. So, what did I expect? Well, for starters, Sakurai being proactive in finding out about potential characters from what games are currently in development. This is going to be a bridge that he's going to have to cross eventually for something besides Pokemon, especially with Nintendo only announcing games now within the year that they intend to release them. But most of all, I expected Rex to be in Smash Bros. I mentioned it earlier with the Mother/Earthbound characters, that their stories are done, and that the only way that they live on is through Smash. Rex is the same. His story is done. But I want to see him back, and while there may be future cameos in Monolith Soft games, it doesn't quite have the same impact as being immortalized in Smash. In many ways, Smash Bros. Is Nintendo's Valhalla, just a gathering of warriors battling to their heart's content just to be killed in Ragnarok.